We'll call to order tonight the meeting of the Westborough Advisory Finance Committee for September 27th, 2018, here in Westborough Town Hall in Memorial Hall. To review our agenda, after this call to order, we will have time for an open forum, and we do have one person here for our open forum. Then we will review and approve past minutes. Tonight we have from DPW and the town engineer, John Walden. Is Carl Baldoff going to be coming as well? Will probably be joining us to discuss the articles. Okay. Okay, on the town warrant regarding the DPW articles. We expect someone from the Country Club Operating Committee, Katie Welch, to attend.
And some friends, yep.
And some friends of the Country Club should be here to tell us about those articles. Then we will continue to review warrant articles. We may take a few votes tonight if members are ready. We'll confirm future draft agendas and then hear any liaison reports, comments, or concerns from the committee, and then we will adjourn. With that, let's move to our open forum. I see we have Selectman Syed Hashmi here, and we're happy to hear from you.
Madam Chair, first, I'm here as an individual.
Okay,
and before I start, I want to first, I think this is the first time I've addressed you as chair, so congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank each of the committee members. I know your task is thankless. I used to come to a lot of your meetings. I don't come because of my work commitment, but it doesn't mean that I'm not watching. And because I'm watching the meetings is one of the reasons why I'm here. Again, as an individual. I know that some of you were on the charter committee, and one of the things on the warrant article this time around is a change to the charter. While that is being, it's a Board of Selectmen thing, it's one of the people that proposed it was myself, and I wanted to explain sorry.
Can I just point, that's warrant article for 33 if people want to, it is warrant article 33 if people want to look at the language. Okay, thank you.
Okay, no, thanks, Madam Chair. And so the current setup of appointing members to the Municipal Building Committee, the Board of Assessors, and the Board of Health, of which, by the way, I'm also a member of, is that they're all town manager appointments. What this article intends to do is to move that to concurrence. It doesn't mean that the Board of Selectmen gets to appoint those members. It just means that they're informed and there's communication. I think this communication is essential, and I was one of the things I was going to say is, to me, that the town charter, for instance, is a guidelines for how the town should function, and I recognize a lot of work went to writing that charter, but as we have, certainly as I've been on I've been seeing the functioning, I think allowing this change would allow for more transparency and more communication between the town administration and the Board of Selectmen. Now, I recognize that there are appropriate questions. Hey, we just went through this. Why this change? We felt that, I won't say we, I felt that this would improve communication between the Board of Selectmen and the town administration, and also gives you as voters, because that's ultimately who you are, accountability and transparency. So the second part of my little talk was that the committee, the Senior Taxation Aid Committee, to look at senior taxation in town is set up. I would love to have a liaison. Mr. Wells, not to throw him under the bus, was one of the people that gave me a lot of ideas. I hope that he will, well, but you should be used to it. You should be used to it from me by now. I hope Mr. Wells will volunteer, hint, hint, to serve on that committee, but I would also encourage anyone else from this committee. There are 3 people that are regular citizens that can be on that committee. I hope you guys have special expertise in this area, so I hope more of you will volunteer. I will stop there, and if you guys have any questions, Madam Chair.
Sure, we can take questions from anybody who has questions or comments. Yes, Paul.
I think I know what concurrence means, but does it mean that the town manager has to also agree?
Yeah, I mean, remember, the town manager will be selecting these people, but
okay, can't be appointed.
But all it just means is, yeah, that currently I could be appointed to the Board of Assessors tomorrow, and the Board of Selectmen would never know about it. All that it means now is that that we would be notified, and our concurrence as it would be sought. What constitutes concurrence? Agreement. I would think,
Would it be, I mean, would you expect that would be a vote of the selectmen, with 3 of the 5
that's actually a
of you
great question. I would suspect a
would-
majority vote from the Board of Selectmen would, but I will defer that to our lawyers, but that's a
Okay.
great question.
Right.
And Beth, yep.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think this is a good time to take this on, because when there's an interim town manager, this isn't a slight on the town manager or a position.
Right.
It's just an interim opportunity to
To
say this is
clarify.
a time to make a change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are-
So,
Just to express an opinion, I think it's, I'm a little uncomfortable that we're choosing, that the voters may choose to start to amend the charter piecemeal. One line item at a time, one issue at a time, and we'll be continuing going back to the general court. And my sense is historically, that's not been the process. And I don't understand why it's so imperative that this particular issue and this particular short list of appointments be dealt with immediately, rather than referring to the Charter Commission as part of their warrant to deal with the issue.
Mr. Rausch, first of all, I completely agree with you. Okay, and it's internally we discussed this ourselves. Again, I'm here as an individual, but it was a public discussion about this. I'm deeply concerned myself about change. I mean, there was a lot of work, but as I said, we found that there was an problem with communication. We do not want this problem happening again, and I think people want transparency and accountability, and I think that there was a lacune in this charter with regards to this, and I think it's up to the voters to decide. But you're right, I certainly do not want to be, and I don't have the time to be picking apart the charter. I don't. I think a lot of work went into this, but I think this, as somebody that was elected, I felt that this was a problem, and I think this needs to be resolved.
so, yeah, anyone else? Yeah, Jim?
Is this putting an additional burden on the Board of Selectmen to get into conflict with the town manager?
I don't, that, again, a great question, Mr. Driscoll, but I don't think it's another bone of contention. I think it will actually open up communication, and that is ultimately the only reason why I did it. I think that when you do things without communication, I think it leads to more conflict. If you're open and you share knowledge, share information, I think it leads to better collaboration. And ultimately, the aim of this amendment is to improve collaboration, it's to improve communication, and it's to improve accountability, sir.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Bradley.
Yep.
Are there other positions that are not included here? And I see that this line is specifically written to address these 3.
It was just because those 3 positions were, so if you read the charter, and I don't have one with me, it was these 3 positions, so that were in that part of the charter that were,
Okay.
and so we didn't want to just do it like just the municipal building committee. Only our lawyer suggested doing all 3 because that was impacted. The rest are very clearly defined.
Okay.
That's not a good answer. It's a barely acceptable answer, but if you look at the part of the charter, that's, I think, the only part that is the part that the town manager does not have concurrence on, or gets to a point without asking the board.
And if I may say that answer speaks very much to what Mr. Rausch was saying, in as much as you've admitted, or you've again reinforced the fact that this is really just a targeted piecemeal answer, instead of the more comprehensive step back and dealing with this more holistically, which is probably bigger than one piece here.
I'm going to say, having read this part of it, it's those 3 were already piecemeal. It's putting them back into the whole.
Thank you. See, this is why she's so much more eloquent. Yes.
But clarify what, putting.
So basically, all the other positions, the selectmen get to hear about the appointments.
Okay.
These 3, because of the nature, they happen to have special attributes. They were separated initially because, like, the Board of Health is not responsive, I think is the right word, to the selectmen. It's responsive to the state.
Okay.
So somehow the town manager position became the appointing authority.
Making it an administrative appointment rather than
A political one.
Yep.
And so somehow these 3 positions, I can't speak to the other 2, ended up being separate from all the other positions in town that the Board of Selectmen
Okay.
can oversee.
Right, and I think this brings it, anyway, she gave a much more eloquent answer.
Thank you.
Maybe you should have my job. You're welcome to have it, by the way.
No, thank you. I'm happy here.
So oh, yes, Sean.
So, if I understand what was just said, these positions were intentionally depoliticized.
I would be reluctant to use the word, I think politics is everything. It informs, I don't think, I'm sorry, I don't think that go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think, you can't separate any politics from anything. I think that they were thought to be more administrative, but again, what we found is we just want, so I'll just speak for myself. I would like to know, who's being appointed, what their qualifications were. I think the voters of the town would want to know. And I think that's the debate I want to have. Now, the voters may choose, like, hey, we don't want this, and that's perfectly fine, but I think this was, and to go back to Mr. Rausch's point, I think this was I felt that it was important that we have this discussion. This led to a lot of contentious debate between the Board of Selectmen and the town administration. We've identified a problem in the charter. This is a way to offer a fix that satisfies. Go ahead.
No, sort of separate question. So there are requirements to get an article on the fall town meeting. Is this article met those requirements yet?
Funny you should ask. Actually, that's a great question. So I think there's a part of the charter, I don't have it right off the hand, but individuals can submit articles to the charter committee, to the town meeting. It's up to the Board of Selectmen whether they choose to approve it or not. If the Board of Selectmen, for instance, denies it, then you can, for instance, petition the Board of Selectmen. I think, and Mr. Wells, correct me if I'm wrong, if you need 100 vote,
100 signatures.
150.
I think it's 150.
100 for a special town meeting, 10 for the.
Oh my God, our moderator is here.
Okay.
I knew it was
100
100
for the fall,
Right.
okay.
100 for a special town meeting.
But great question. So yes, an individual can suggest it. It was, and this question, a great question, was actually discussed by the board, and there was a divided vote on the board, echoing some of the discussion that I'm having here with you. But again, as I felt that the voters of the town needed to be aware that, the Board of Selectmen is actually wanting some more communication, and I felt we can decide. Are there any other?
Yes, Mr. McGoldrick.
You characterize the problem as one of communication.
Can you use microphone?
You've characterized the problem at the root of this of a lack of communication.
Yes.
We are talking about a town manager and 3 division heads, or
Three commissions.
heads. Okay. Is there not an easier way to get them to communicate than restructuring
I
this?
wish there was.
Well, for instance, one could, for anyone who's paid, put it as part of their job description to keep other people up to
Yeah,
date.
and again, you're absolutely correct, but I think this way, it's in the charter, and it's not just for any one town manager, it'll be for future town managers, and it's there that this is, I wish we wouldn't have had this problem, but we did. There was, we had meetings, prolonged meetings with the lawyers, and I don't want to go through that again, and I'm sure nobody else does either.
I guess I have a lack of background in the specifics here. I'm just troubled by having 4 people who don't talk to each other enough, and then restructuring like this, especially when you've got an overall charter review going on.
Well, that charter review, the current charter review is on a different thing. It is, it's to look at the type and form of government. So, I mean, that charter review doesn't have the, correct me, and
That's not totally accurate.
okay, but go ahead, Mr.
Hank
As part
is
of the
on
charter
there.
statement, as part of the charter statement, it was to address any other issues or areas that would provide more accountability and more responsiveness of the government to the voters. So in the sense that this is intended to provide additional responsiveness and accountability to the voters, it would not be out of line to refer this to the Charter Commission to review as part of their work.
And did you have a response?
Yes,
We have one more
and
question
I
here
think
then.
that, I think that would, that charter commission would take a while. It is a lengthy deliberation. I'll just say it for myself. I felt that this is something that needed to be done sooner rather than later. But again, all of you make valid, points.
Ms. Bloomberg?
Yeah, hi. I mean, just for history, it's my understanding that the Board of Selectmen charges the Charter Review Commission every 5 or so years with
It's
a
not
specific.
accurate.
Hold on just a minute.
Okay, that's what my
It's
understanding
not
is.
accurate.
We'll get-
Okay,
Charter commissions are ad hoc. The Board of Selectmen periodically,
that's what I tried to say. I used the word
well, but
charter.
there's not a specific periodicity.
Okay.
It's whenever the Board of Selectmen believes it's needed. We had a charter commission that spent 2 years ago and did major revisions. We have another one who has just started. My guess is it'll take them 18 to 24 months to do things. We can do this every 2 years, or we can, do something different.
And
Did you
go-
have is that any
It's a-
different than the point you were
Yeah,
making?
yeah, the point I was making was that in general, the selectmen asked the Charter Review Committee to look at a specific attribute of the charter. This one might be the structure, but it's the selectmen's direction to the Charter Review Committee, so I don't find that this is incompatible.
Okay. All right, I'm not going to spend a lot more time on this. I think we understand.
Thank
It
you.
sounds to me, my takeaway, it sounds to me like your intention was to add some accountability for communication
That's all.
around the appointments. You still consider it an administrative appointment with the concurrence of Board of Selectmen.
Absolutely.
I would be concerned if we got to a point where a town manager would want to appoint someone to one of our 3 most important boards and couldn't get 3 votes out of the selectmen to support that. I would hope that scenario would never happen. So anyway, that's my takeaway. Then we have to think about whether this whether a separate article at town meeting is warranted, quote unquote, or whether waiting 18 months for the charter
And that, I
review
think, is a
to-
debate that we should have, and that's all I wanted.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you all for your questions.
Any other questions for the selectman while he's here? Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep. All right, then, we're going to review past minutes. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes of September 24th? Mr. McGoldrick, motion is made. Do we have a second? Mr. Keough, any discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 8 out of 9 with 810. We have, or 801. We have an abstention.
Wait, besides me?
Oh, you're abstaining as well.
Right,
So
that's what I told
it's
you.
702.
It's 702, yeah.
702 to approve the minutes. All right, we have some DPW articles, and we have our DPW manager, John Walden, and our town engineer, Carl Bolduff, here to explain them to us. And if we take a look at what our DPW articles are, they're number 4, 16, 30, 31, 32, and 41. So yes, if you'd like to explain those to us, thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Walden. Yep.
John Walden, DPW Director. On Article 4, I'm looking to replenish my overtime account. All the work that we did in the center of town here, we had money budgeted through the Chapter 90 appropriation for police officers. What happened was we couldn't get any police details, so I had to bring in 8 to 10 people every night for the work that we did out here for flag people. So right now my overtime account is $30,000 light, and I need to replenish that.
All right. And we heard a little bit about this from our town manager. Did you have more, or should we just take questions from the
Well,
committee?
basically, the money was appropriated into the Chapter 90, but I can't pay my personnel out of Chapter 90. So I need to ask for an appropriation.
We have Mr. Keough, yep.
Hugo.
Mr. Hugo, sorry, Paul.
Sorry. That sounded a little different than what I had heard before, so are the police details paid out of a different account, is that why?
Yes, the police details are paid out of the Chapter 90 appropriation, but when we called for details, we couldn't get any, and I had to have people out there to direct traffic, so I had my own personnel do it.
Okay, Ms. Blumberg.
So just officially, in terms of sort of pre-approval, you obviously knew, and town manager knew ahead of time? I mean, because there was obviously a decision made to do this at night. So who, because obviously you didn't have the funding because we only meet so often, but who kind of gave you the, okay, go ahead and do this, and we'll find the funding later?
We had to, because I had the grinding machine and the paving machines, and I couldn't shut the job down, so I had my people come in as flag people.
Was this also at night downtown?
Yes.
Here? So I mean, we
Nighttime
heard from
work.
the town manager that there was a choice to do it when there was low traffic and low disruption. to
Right, I
business.
understand that that was the choice. I was wondering who was in on the choice.
Myself, I just basically
Okay,
said,
yeah.
we have to get this job done. The equipment's sitting out here, call people in, and we got flags.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Driscoll.
What was the reason we didn't have any police details?
They were working details elsewhere.
Is this overtime almost like the police? I think the police, if they go to overtime, I have to be guaranteed so many hours.
I don't know.
I don't
And my other
handle,
question is this cheaper than having police?
No.
well, it took more people. I was figuring on like 6 police officers per night, and due to the inexperience of my people handling traffic, I brought in some extra people to cover the work.
Mr. Bradley?
Are we viewing this as just a one-time fix to backfill, because of the, backfill is probably the wrong word, but to deal with this one activity? Or is this the kind of thing that we see doing more of going forward, and we should probably address as a budget issue going forward?
It probably wouldn't hurt to appropriate more money in the police detail line item. I can't answer for the police chief. I know that he's attempting to bring more people onto the workforce, the work details.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Okay.
okay.
Mr. Wells?
John, to speak a little bit to Andrews, why wouldn't we consider training DPW personnel to direct traffic? As everybody knows, I spent a lot of time in the state of Maine. State of Maine does a lot of road work. All the local road work is controlled, the traffic flow is controlled by DPW workers.
I would prefer, number one, I don't have the manpower. I mean,
No,
Yeah.
I'm not saying, but why would we not consider, having DPW details instead of police details? I mean, the DPW details would be less expensive than the police details would be.
we do that on side streets, but on main roads and big projects like this where there's a lot of traffic, I would prefer to have a police officer out there. But again, this is once every 15 years that happens downtown.
All right, Ms. Bloomberg, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I thought the issue was that Chapter 90 funds are willing to pay police details, but they're not willing to pay DPW workers. And so this was more of a question of who you were able to get for this particular job.
I can't use the Chapter 90 money that I had appropriated for the work to pay payroll, which is what happened. My people were on the clock.
Right, but if it were police details, you would have been able to use it?
Yes,
That's what I'm trying to say. This
Yeah.
is an issue of how the money is able to be spent.
yeah, the money was appropriated under the Chapter 90, but I wasn't.
So is there
Planning to-
money left over in the Chapter 90 funds?
That money will be unencumbered when the project is completely finished. We'll ask the state to unencumber that money and put it towards another project.
Okay, so, and my question, any other questions here? This money has been spent, the funds have to be replenished. Do we have an option here?
Not really. I mean, what will happen is if the money's not replenished, you'll see it happen at springtime. I won't be able to come in and do the spring cleanup, and there's a lot of work that happens on overtime in the springtime.
Any other questions on this, Jim?
Yeah, I just think it's a question going forward as to what we're going to do in other areas of the town when police details aren't available. And to go to Gary's point, maybe we should have some sort of training for DPW people.
So that point could be taken to it doesn't necessarily go to what our vote here, but it's a word of advice for the future.
I mean,
Anything else, anything new?
no. I mean,
Anything new or that would inform the vote here? Okay, that's great. That is Article 4. Then your next article is Article 16, Appropriation of Transportation Infrastructure Fund.
Yes, about 2 months ago, Jim gave me a call and he asked me if I had some kind of a project. We were offered this money from the state, and I had to come up with an answer like right away, because we had to lock this money up. So a quick, easy job for me to come up with was on West Main Street from the Grafton line down to the intersection of Nurse Street. The manholes structures need to be repaired and elevated. So I gave a quick answer, and as that is the project, because the manholes are low and they're deteriorating. So
Okay, Ms. Bloomberg, you have a question?
the basic question, you would have done this anyway, but this is just a way to pay for it, or?
the money was available, but we had to offer.
But is this is something that you actually, now that you're thinking about it and pausing, that we really need to do anyway?
Yes, it needed to be done anyways.
Okay.
So.
Other questions
Perfect.
on this one? It's my understanding that this comes from the Lyft and Uber kind of tax, so this is money that's given to the town, but the town meeting has to approve it in order to
Right.
be spent.
Exactly.
And you've recommended the manhole project. Does anyone need to know any more about this article? Okay, then the next one is Article 30, Town Sewer System Amendment.
Yes, I have the town engineer to speak on this. But in June, we went out to bid to do some work on the Banyan and Cumberland Farms pump station. And we had it, from the annual town meeting, we had $2 million appropriated to do this work. And the bid came in at what was it? Came in too high.
The bid came in at about 2.593 million, and we had only appropriated 2 million for the whole project. So I know the board will ask, how did we arrive at the original figure? And we have a consulting engineer that prepared the plans and documents. I guess I'm really going to take a step further back. About 8 or 9 years ago, we studied, there are 5 stations of similar design in town. There are Dakota stations that were put in. This series of 3 were put in 30 years ago. We rebuilt the first one, which is Long Meadow, in '09, but we had done a study that gave us a template to move forward. Anyway, Long Meadow was done. The same engineer came and did the plans and specs, and we decided after the first one, we would do the next 4 in pairs of 2, so that when we prepared plans and specs, we would do 2 at once. There would be economy on the engineering, etc. So the same engineer did the design and came up with an estimate for us, and we submitted an article, and actually we boosted it a little bit because I was nervous that construction costs would increase. Evidently, the estimate that we got from the engineer and that we started to create the funding for the article was low. So there's not much we can do other than, we have put it to the market test. There is not a lot of, there's not a lot of extras. We couldn't award the contract, so the low bidder has agreed to hold his price while we attempt to seek more funding to do this job.
Okay. Other questions from the committee? Yes, Hank?
The article says appropriate. It doesn't seem to be specific about from where.
It's from the sewer retained earnings, and I spoke with the finance director and the interim town manager about an hour and a half ago, and they feel that that was originally also an appropriate from sewer retained earnings, and they feel that the sewer retained earnings can withstand that type of an appropriation. I guess there's about a $3.1 million balance currently. If we take 1.2 out of it, that will leave the balance at about 1.8 million or so.
So that's, the funding
So
would
that'll
come.
be handled on this town meeting floor by way of the, I can't remember what they call it.
Motion.
It's a raise and appropriate, or it's not a raise.
Is it from the enterprise fund, right?
Is it a
Insurance.
transfer? What is it?
No.
What is it?
I'm reading the motion, I'm trying to read the motion right
Yeah.
now. It looks to me like Article 30 motion appears to me to be a borrow motion.
Article 30?
Speaking,
It says, I move that the town appropriate 1.2 million to pay additional design costs for repair, replacement, blah, blah, blah. Which amount shall be expended in addition to the 2 million previously appropriated? And to meet this appropriation, the town treasurer, with the approval of the selectmen, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Mass General Law, so forth and so on. And then it goes on with the usual bond noting wording about premiums received. So as the warrant article, as the motion currently stands, well, published motion stands right at the moment, this is a borrowing article.
thank you, Mr. Wells. I don't have the motions, so I'm not sure what they're doing with that. But I believe that that will get revised if my conversation with the finance director and with the interim town manager is accurate.
Okay. Well, yeah, it depends on the because right now the sewer retained earnings is being certified as of the close of last fiscal year. So Leah Talbot is in the process of getting the certifications on those values now. So if she says we're going to have $3 million in certified retained earnings, then we obviously have the ability to draw 1.2 million.
Paul Hero?
And
Yep.
It's
Oh, sorry.
apparently going back and forth. I just wanted to point out, I have an old version, and I looked there first, and it did say from the retained earnings.
Yeah.
Right.
So they've taken that out, and now they're saying, so it sounds like it's going back and forth, so
Yep.
it does seem like we've hit on something. I'm sure
But
that
again, we need to understand a warrant is closed, so the warrant's not gonna change.
But the motions can.
The motions can, but I would suggest that when the finance committee votes on this item, they need to be specific about what source of funding they're voting to support.
Of the warrant, yeah, we did. Yes, Sean? Mhm.
Yeah, so, separate question, so I think you said the bid came in at about 2.6 million,
Correct.
and originally 2 million had been raised.
Correct.
So you're requesting 1.2 million.
I am.
In addition to the.
Oh, we are.
Okay, so the other 600,000 is for,
Originally, so essentially, within the first bid, we anticipated a $1.6 million construction cost. The construction engineering and whatnot is substantial for these jobs because there's a lot of equipment, a lot of supervision. They drag out over a fair length of time. So we had about $200,000 for construction services and about another $200,000 for contingencies. Given the fact that the bidding environment is low, it seems to be less competitive than it was, and we're going very deep in the ground. I wanted to make sure that we did not have to come back here again. We're going 20 feet around the, I've got photos and slides and all that, and of course I forgot to bring my laptop this morning, but the Cumberland Station, we have to replace the wet well in. We're going to go all of 20 feet in the ground. There's steel sheeting, it's specialized work, there's a brook right next to it. We're working in confined quarters. I believe that has a lot to do with why the bid came in the way it is. There are some borings, but I don't know what was buried around that station. It's sitting on a slab. We got to remove it from the slab and get all that work done. The odds that we'll encounter something that we didn't anticipate are there, and I don't want to have to stop that job while we're in motion. That would be having the bid funds be insufficient and having the bidder hold his bid really isn't costing us much right now, but time. Maybe a little, they're holding their prices. But if we have to stop a job in motion because there's a big extra and we don't have funds, then it's going to cost us.
Are there other questions or, yes, Andrew?
Sure. Can we assume then that the Banyan and Cumberland sewer pump stations are the two stations that are both most in need of the next set of updates, and that they're both equally in need, and that there isn't an option to possibly just do one or the other?
These refurbished jobs happen every 30 years,
Okay.
and we have 34 sewer pump stations. And so we've done how many? Half a dozen?
Not even that.
So if you look, just that factor alone, we should be doing 2 or 3 years,
Okay.
two or three pump stations per year. So that's why we're going for the 2 on this project, because they're the same age.
Okay.
They're the same age, they're exposed to the same
Yep.
sewer environment. The concrete in the wet wells has been deteriorating from sewer gases, and that's why we have to.
Okay. I appreciate that.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So what I'm hearing, it's a $1.2 million, very prudent expenditure right now that needs to be made and has been planned, but I am not clear on the motion whether this is a borrowing or a transfer from sewer retained earnings or an appropriate. So where do I'm going to ask the wisdom of the committee here. Well, how
We
do
have
we
to,
become?
Wait.
We will have to confer with
Christie
Leah,
and Christie.
Okay.
first of all, on the value of the sewer retained, the certified value of the sewer retained earnings.
Okay.
Okay, that would be the first thing, and then deal with Christie on revision of the motion.
So we asked Leah Talbot, who is our town
Just
accountant.
to
and-
add some light, I had a conversation with Christie today, and there's a conversation going on amongst the town staff as to where the appropriate places to get the money from.
Okay.
So they haven't made up their mind.
Right.
And,
So-
okay, so we'll know more by the time we get to town meeting. And you had another comment, and then we'll get Mr. McGoldrick. Did you have a comment on that?
I just want to comment, so we had 2 million appropriated from retained earnings under the first article
Yep.
this past spring.
Okay.
We're asking for an additional 1.2 million so that the gross appropriation to do this job will be 3.2. There is confusion about whether it will be a borrow or a transfer from retained earnings. There's no doubt that it's going to come from the sewer account. It is a sewer job, and that's where it belongs.
Huh, okay.
So the source is fine. I think clearing up whether we borrow or whether we transfer from retained earnings is a
Okay.
question that needs to be
We can
answered.
borrow it from the same account from which we can transfer it. I understand.
Correct.
Mr. McGoldrick.
Excuse me, I have a document here from Jim Malloy from our meeting. On Article 30, it says, among other things, the town treasurer, with the approval of the selectmen, is authorized to borrow said amount. And it's referring to the 1.2 million.
Yep, that's what we're discussing. Are we really going to borrow it
Well, that was a que-
from retained earnings, or are we going to transfer
No, we wouldn't borrow it from retained earnings.
Borrow
We
it
would
from
borrow
the-
it from,
sewer retained earnings?
no, we transfer from sewer retained
We would-
earnings, or we borrow it from the people who loan us money as a town.
Yeah, but
Correct. So that if it was a borrow, it would come from a bonding company, and they
Right.
package that. The finance director and treasurer package those. However, the payments, both principal and interest, would come from the sewer retained earnings
The
account.
payments, I understand. That's, yeah.
And I just wanted to emphasize, we're appropriating this. If you see the fact that, okay, we're appropriating a little wide compared to what the bid is, we spend what we need to, all right? And if we don't, essentially that borrowing authorization will be returned or redacted. I can't think of the correct term for it in the end. In other words,
Yeah.
we use what we need to, whether it be an appropriation or a borrow.
You just want a contingency fund, essentially, to make sure that if there is an overage, you can deal with it instead of having to come back.
Correct.
And you don't halt the project in the middle of work. Mr. Driscoll?
Just a real quick question. Is there a required balance to be maintained in that sewer retained earnings?
That's an excellent question, but the finance director seemed very comfortable with having the retained earnings account at 1.8 million. In other words, an hour and a half ago or two probably by now, she didn't seem to have any problem with that. I don't know if there's a set dollar figure that we like to maintain in that retained earnings account for either water or sewer. I'm not quite sure. what the bottom
Yeah.
the finance group would be comfortable with.
There is a fiscal policies,
I don't believe the fiscal policy document that the selectmen have agreed to,
addresses this.
I mean, it addresses controls around enterprise funds, but it does not, I do not believe it establishes a minimum level of enterprise funds.
Or
Enterprise fund retained earnings, enterprise funds, to me, the same thing.
okay. Paul, and then we'll come to Andrew.
Sorry, it might be
Yep.
academic depending on how that turns out, but if it becomes borrowed, I think it's going to be hard to justify that if we have to do 2 every year. You'd just be borrowing more and more every year. So when we get to that point, I think that's definitely a huge distinction, given that you're going to keep going every year. It's not like this is going to be good for 5, 10 years or something.
Yeah, depends on what I mean, we'd have to figure out what the payments coming out of the account is and how quickly we'd be draining the account, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's just going to get worse. If we have to borrow now and we have to keep going and going, we're just going to keep borrowing and borrowing and going.
And Andrew was next, yes.
Sure, I can imagine a cynical concern saying that if we authorize the extra 600,000 over what's known, with an understanding that you shared that it's a contingency, but the cynical perspective might be that if you authorize it, it will be spent. So can you speak for just a moment about the experience or the history you guys have of returning extra borrowing that was unused? And return is the wrong word, but
Not spending.
Not spending it.
What has happened in the past is if we do have a balance in a water search account or a pump station refurbish account,
Yeah.
when we come in the following year for more water search money or sewer pump station refurbish, that money's transferred to the request.
Okay.
So we do housekeeping that way.
Ms. Blumberg?
Who
you.
sets the sewer rates, and, like, is this something that because we're tapping into it so much because of these things that need to be refurbished, do we think the rates are going to go up?
Well, they are going to go up regardless with the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay,
that's
you're right, it's just a question of how much.
exactly. And out of the 34 sewer pump stations, there's probably like 8 that are major big pump stations like we're discussing now. And then there are a great number of them that are small pump stations that wouldn't require this kind of money. So
Ms. Blumberg, and then I'm going to come over to Mr.
Yeah,
Driscoll.
so
Just
it's
as-
my understanding from previous years, we felt like you needed to set up a schedule and start working on these because, like, we'd rather have you fix them before they go really bad. So maybe that's something that if you could kind of drop a like, hey, or you may already have it, show us like, here's the plan where you anticipate doing them over the next, because these are an ongoing, continuous process. So it's really more of a planning thing because we can't not do it, as best as I understand, if we like infrastructure.
We do that, and we can forward that. To go to Mr. Bradley's question, I was racking my brain a little bit to recall the last sewer borrow, and it was probably the Crown Ridge Fox area. And I don't really recall where we ended up on finances on that. It certainly wasn't short, but I can't give you a figure. It's a little too far back to remember the appropriations. We did Crown Ridge Fox and Weld Folly sewer extensions were both borrows in 09 or 10, and then maybe 12, somewhere in there.
Thank you.
Mr. Driscoll, you had a question, and then Mr. Roush.
If we borrow and we don't use all the funds, will you be coming back for those things to say that the town has already voted on the additional $600,000 and you want to spend it on additional DPW programs or projects?
no, it would be totally up to the town manager and the finance director and you as to what to do with that.
Yeah, the only reason I asked the question is that's what's happening with the school and some of the warrants.
There's so the question, Mr. Baldoff, you said there is a queue of priority next projects as we can get to them. Is that, were you suggesting there is a queue of
There
the
absolutely
priority of
is.
the next? So if you weren't to spend out all of what you asked for on this one, would it be reserved to pursue your next priority? Or what would be the strategy there if you didn't spend this one out?
So, for example, next year, if we come forward to do a pump station with an estimated $700,000 value, everyone would evaluate the balances left in previous jobs, and they would transfer that money as part of the... So let's say, for example, there's $300,000 available from a previous appropriation. They would transfer that to the article at town meeting.
Yeah,
Does that
again,
make sense?
just to be clear, I mean, the DPW and no other department has the authority to transfer funds from one account to another.
Okay.
No, it would be a vote of the town meeting to do that.
Any transfers of this sort, folks have to come back to town meeting. The finance director maintains multi-year records. She maintains records that go back to day one of all the town meeting warrant article appropriations and the expenditures against that. She puts out a report, I can't remember if it's once or twice a year, she puts out a report that indicates what funding is left. And funding cannot be transferred from one project to another. So you can't take money from this particular pump station and use it on some other pump station without town meeting approval.
And Mr. Bolduff, did you have a response to that?
Just, it has not been, I've obviously looked at the warrant. It has not been our position or tradition to go back and say, let's say we do have $600,000 left over. We have rarely, or at least during my tenure, come back and said, let's transfer that authorization, that borrow over to another project.
Okay.
Without a town meeting vote. You know, it would be based on recommendations by you, the budget director, and then ultimately it would be a vote of the town meeting.
Okay. Any other questions to clarify your vote on this? Yes, Hank?
I'm wondering if you're the right folks to come back to us with an understanding over a 3 or 5 year period what the capital, what the borrows are going to be, and how that's going to impact our rate structure. I'm wondering if that's something that the DPW ought to be responding to, or whether we ought to be asking the town manager to tell us what kind of the longer-term plan is and what the plan is for sewer rates.
Just a moment.
Yeah, well, I guess that, and I agree with you, but we would have to see what the plan going forward is as to, you know, how many stations we're going to do over the next 5 or 6 years.
So, Carl, did you have a response to that?
We will provide that. I have it now. I haven't had a chance to update it.
Okay.
We've got to catch up with that a little bit. We'll prepare it and forward it. It gets a little bit difficult to estimate at the 5-year out level. We've got to start pulling numbers out of a hat. I don't really like to do it.
No, it should be. Well, and it's
we can do that. I do have it, but we need to spend some time to update that.
Sure.
We won't be back for another pump station appropriation. We will not do it in the spring, perhaps the following spring after that.
Okay. All right. All right. Other clarifying questions here? Okay. Thank you for that. And let me see, what do you have next here? You have number 31, which is the town sewer system.
It was still on the sewer.
Yep.
Now we're conveying the sewer. This request is, at the last annual town meeting, money was appropriated for engineering to evaluate a trunk line that was installed in the 1960s. It's a concrete 36 inches, 30-inch pipe. It's concrete. It was installed in the mid-60s and really hasn't been evaluated. So we had that done, and it was determined that work had to happen. And so we put together a contract, and now we're ready to bid that contract out. Carl has the particulars on that.
Okay, thanks.
As the director has prefaced, the main line that carries the wastewater from most of town to the wastewater treatment plant, which as we know is behind West Meadow Plaza off of Route 9, runs from there, largely cross-country behind Robin Road and through some wetland areas and up through Mayberry Drive and to the other side of the railroad tracks on Willow Street, where at that point several lines converge. So this 30-inch concrete pipe takes the wastewater across town over to the plant. Installed 1968, 50 years. It needs attention. We had earlier run cameras through it and found that there's some deterioration. So we have a design set ready to go very shortly, and the engineer has estimated the cost and hopefully done a good job on it. So we're asking for the funds to be able to really pull a liner within that pipe. Right now, we're not anticipating having to physically replace any of the pipe, but just pull a liner into the pipe, rehabilitate the manholes so that they don't leak, and essentially make this so it will go at least another 50 years. And it's a very high price of failure if there are problems with that pipe. If it keeps rotting and we have a collapse, that's a problem. Originally, we were going to go a little further with it, but when the study was done, we actually found out there's some areas along this interceptor where the pipes sloped backwards, and there was some real concern about capacity. So there's another stretch upstream that we're going to come back looking for, and we may actually use a piece of old pipe from 100 years ago that was abandoned in place. And when we get through with that, we might rehabilitate that pipe to give us a little extra capacity. As you go from about Willow Street and Water back up Willow, and then the interceptor crosses under the railroad and goes up East Main Street towards the Rotary, the pipe keeps getting smaller. It's probably 18 inches around the Rotary. It then jumps to 20 somewhere along the way. That's actually the area where the capacities get to be a little challenging. So we're going to look at that separately, but we feel this is a time to get into that 30-inch line, get this liner in, and get that piece of infrastructure in good shape. And as you look forward towards capital, we'll be back. This is a fairly substantial chunk of pipe to do, but we're going to be looking at these older sewer lines from now till a long time out.
Okay. Do we have questions on the committee? Yes, Mr. Bradley?
So as we talk about camp projects like this, and in reflection of the conversations we just had about the other work that you were doing that required details and all that stuff, is all of this going to be able to be handled in terms of the traffic, the maintenance, the impact? Because you're touching some very populated areas, it would appear, if this is happening above ground at all. Are there other costs that are attendant that would not be covered by this?
Well, there's just like anything we do, the actual construction contract will carry most of the cost, including the police.
Okay.
There's always engineering supervision above that, and there's always an allocation for unexpected issues. This part, a lot of this pipe isn't in the road, so right now I can't tell you what kind of a value I've estimated on police in there, but it's not a big road job. We cross some streets. There's definitely going to have to be a police presence. Mm-hmm. But it's not like we're running down Route 30 or 135. We're cross-country in a lot of places here. Okay. So the contract will carry those numbers in there. So I don't anticipate a lot of out-of-contract costs other than the engineering supervision.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Other questions on the committee? Yes, Mr. Driscoll?
I just have a question that I know nothing about. So it's a 30-inch diameter pipe. You're going to pull a liner in. What does that do to the dimensions of the pipe?
It becomes a 28-inch.
It does narrow it. However, the liners have a smoother surface, so the hydraulic coefficients used to calculate the flow, it could very well end up having a better capacity after the liner is in. And that's part of what we paid for in the engineering evaluation. They've actually run a hydraulic model on it because our capacities are tight. There was going to be, I should say, there's no sense to line this if the capacity was insufficient. Then we would replace and upgrade the size. But the study has said, listen, we're okay on capacity, and we will be able to line this, which is a much cheaper option.
Great, thank you. Other
Can
questions?
I-
Yes,
Just
Mr.
a follow-up question. You mentioned around the Rotary is an 18-inch capacity. So I guess we'd be going in the opposite direction. We'd be increasing the diameter of those. Am I correct?
I'm going to try not to, because the last thing I want to do is put new pipe in the center of town.
I guess that's where I'm going. If it's a problem now and it's only 18 inches, what are we going to run into? I mean, The way I look at it is you have to kind of expand it, the
Um,
diameter to get the flow.
It was not an issue that would be we did, so the modeling makes the state sets guidelines and they ask us to prove that we can take a 5-year rainstorm, which is gonna be, I don't know, 2.5 inches of rain in 24 hours. All these systems leak water to a certain degree, and said they make you model the flows under the condition with a 5-year rainstorm, and said make sure you stay all in your system. That's what the DEP considers reasonable. So our system passed even downtown in the Rotary with the 18-inch line. But it's close, but trying to put new pipe down there would be very, very costly. And I should also say that we've looked forward as far as projections for additional wastewater flow in Westborough, particularly on that side of town. We have some sewer extensions that haven't been completed, but really in terms of the flow that's going to come through here, we're not looking at a lot of expansion there. Even the one subdivision that's under permit with the planning board now on Mount Pleasant Street, it can only tie 6 homes in, and those were the ones that fronted on Mount Pleasant Street. The new houses aren't being connected. So I don't see a big increase in flow through the Rotary. If we're going to pick up flow, it's going to come in from the other side.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Ms. Bloomberg and then Mr.
Yeah.
Bradley.
What kind of inconvenience will residents feel while you're doing this work? I mean, because, I'm concerned that you're going to say, oops, don't use your, plumbing for the week or whatever. How do you get around this?
That scenario hopefully will not happen. They'll be able to use their plumbing. When these liners are inserted, the flow is blocked on the manholes, and they set up pumps that pump it around. So there's a possibility that while the liner is going, we may have to shut down limited areas. They can do maybe 2 manholes, and that's about 300 feet apiece, all right, and pull a liner about that length, because the liners, it's substantial. It's like taking a long hose and sliding it in the thing. So it's got to get laid out, pulled down, pulled into the pipe sections, and then heated up, cured, and then shortly thereafter the flow can be restored, so we don't have to wait 4 or 5 days or any of that jazz. This is, in other words, they're going to try and pull liner sections in a day or put in one section of liner a day and keep moving around. About 6,400 feet, 6,300 feet of liner that needs to go in. So it should happen fairly fast. Probably the biggest intrusion will be this pipe really runs through yards and things like that in some cases. So we're going to have to you've got to get access to it. There are easements. We're actually going to need to acquire some easements to get into these yards and whatnot. And there's an allocation of money within the estimate right now, and there will be in the contract to fix things up. Whatever we disturb, we're going to fix it up. So you just don't go and drive a machine in and say, forget it. You go in and leave the place in good condition when we're done with it.
Great. Mr. Bradley.
For the 18-inch pipe with the liner, I heard you account for the rainfalls. Are you accounting for those residents you've discovered are flushing towels down their toilets? No?
That's usually at the nursing home.
I'll retract the question then.
All right. Okay, any questions that help us with our vote here on this article? All right, very good. Thank you. That was Article 31. So we got 32 here, which is the town water system.
We're going to clean it up here.
Okay.
This is to request an appropriation for the water purification facility on Fisher Street. Again, we're talking age. We've been having frequent breakdowns with various aspects of the place. And so what we want to do is, we had it evaluated by an engineer, and we want to refurbish the plant. New pumps, new pump starters. They're going to be altering the process somewhat to be more efficient. So the net result of, the net advantage to this is it'll be a more efficient plant.
Okay. We're taking a look at that.
This plant is 22 years old.
Yep.
And as I said, when we try not, once a facility, especially this is very extensive, it's a large facility, Once it starts a nickel dime, you a pump here or pump starter there, you need to do a comprehensive replacement on everything and get everything new.
Okay. All right, we have slides in front of us here. Are you going to walk through these, Carl, or?
Yes, I will,
Okay.
from memory, because I did miscount it, so I don't have a copy, but that's
Oh,
okay.
we can share here. Are
So
you
that's,
sure?
no,
Okay.
believe me,
Okay.
I'm living this stuff, so,
Okay.
you know, there's a cover sheet on that explains the project.
Okay.
We always have slides, we don't like to show them.
Okay.
But you're gonna see as you go through, there's a picture of the plant itself. There's also, oh, thank you. There's a locus map showing where the plant is, and I think everybody knows it's out of the way, so unless you look for it, you're not going to find it, but it's up off of Fisher Street, Smith Valve, behind the new Westborough Village development. There's then a picture of the front of the plant. It was built in 1996, and it's a relatively unimpressive looking building, but it's very functional. It's a good plant. It serves us well. It essentially needs to be renewed. Basically, the next chart is a process diagram. It shows the various stages that the water takes when it enters it. It gets aerated. It goes, and I'm gonna have to put on glasses here. It shows it going through rapid mixers, flocculation basin, sedimentation basin, all these various processes, filters, clear well, and then it gets finally finished pumped into the system. And then I'm going to jump over to the last slide, which is a flyover aerial view. It shows the building on the top of the slide, and then it shows two lagoons where the wash water that can't be used in the process is discharged. That's with the various byproducts. A lot of iron and manganese gets pushed out of the filters into these lagoons. So it works well, but it's 20 years, and there's a lot of moving parts in there. There's motors that turn the water in this flocculation process. It pumps it from one to the other. There's a vacuum system there that takes the sediment that has settled out of the water. There's lots of places where various things get injected into it, and it has to be done precisely. There are big finished water pumps, very big finished water pumps that provide the water to the system. The aeration chamber is oddly one where the water comes in, sprays up through this tower, and comes down on redwood slats. For some reason, that works well in the water process to get air into it. Those slats need to be replaced. There needs to be work done on the lagoons. They pump into the first one, and we're going to do some piping, adjust some slide gates so that the lagoon levels can be managed more carefully. We're also got some constraints for discharge for this. There's a pump that pumps out of those lagoons. It actually pumps it up to Hockomoco Pond when all the things have settled out of the discharge process. Anyway, there's a lot of moving parts here, and that's why it's costing so much money. It works well, but it's just time to refurbish it. We're really not changing anything. It's going to be the same process. We are going to adjust the lagoons so they can be operated either solely or in series for treatment reasons. And there is going to be the addition of a garage. If you go back to the slide that shows the front of the building, I was remiss in putting a picture, but to the left-hand side of the parking lot, there's going to be a 3-bay garage, freestanding, very no frills. It'll have 3 doors on it and a man door. It won't even have windows on the back. And it will be just to house the water purification trucks. There's a van and 2 pickups. One pickup has a plow, and then they have some maintenance equipment for mowing and whatnot, and that's going to be put inside to stay there. So that building will be added on a freestanding basis to the left side of that, and so that's really the extent of our project. We're at about 90% design. Both this and the Interceptor hopefully will be bid right around the first of the year, which is a very good time to bid projects because contractors are in from their summer activities, and that's a good time to put together bids. So It's a substantial project, it's a good project, and we don't want to come back here and ask you for more money either.
So Beth, you have
Hi.
a question.
Yeah, again, it's a multi-part question. So what do we think the life expectancy of this is? And is our water purification at this point basically state-of-the-art? So we're doing as best as we can as a town for water quality?
We're doing as best as we can. There's been a focus, and it's about, we're looking this is 20 years or a little bit more. I think it was put online in 96 or 7. So we're looking for that same period of time for the plant. And there has been some focus on the aluminum discharge, the water actually coming off the lagoons, not the water coming into our drinking water. And we're fairly confident that the DEP hasn't issued a reg on that, but we're fairly confident that when we come out of this that we're going to be okay. We can meet their standards by either adjusting the process or one of possibly a handful of things that can be done. So we're good on that. The only thing that is out there that we can't design for right now is there's a chemical called PFOA, perfluoroorganic compounds, all right.
Okay.
And that's basically found in firefighting foam and non-stick pans, evidently. And so that's in the early stages of trying to get a reg formed. We do test for it. It's indetectable in our water, so we can't, that might be, I don't know. I don't even want to say how far down the road, but right now, under the current testing and regs, we're in good shape. So this doesn't account for that, but we're good for everything that we can possibly see right now. I don't want to renovate a plant and come back 2 years, 5 years, even 10 years in and say, okay, we need to do something different.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, Mr. Driscoll.
Just for clarification, do we have a contractor actually running that plant?
Yes, Veolia Water.
Veolia Water? So it's not us, they report to DPW, or how does that work?
They work under our direction, all right?
Were they the contractor that put the design together for the?
No, that was Weston and Sampson.
Thank you.
All right. Yes.
This one and the last one also have the borrow issue in it, so we really need to look at
Yep, I see that.
the big picture for all this stuff. Come on.
Yeah, it's whether it's a transfer from water retained earnings or a borrow. So, yes, go ahead.
It's definitely a borrow, this article, from the water account.
Okay.
And previous Article 31 is also slated to be a borrow, but
Okay.
from the sewer account.
So it's only Article 30 that's a question mark. And when you say it's from that account, meaning that you'll borrow but you'll pay out of that, the payments will come out of a
Correct.
retained earnings account. So there is a place to pay for the borrowing. I was assuming that these are not projects that have come up quickly, that you have been thinking of this and processing it with the town manager for years, and that our finance director has a handle on how this can be financed now and moving forward.
Yes, they do, and we have, for the water treatment plant, we actually first did a design study, which was pretty thorough. I think that was probably 2 years ago. And then a year ago, Springtown meeting, we appropriated the design funds and now the construction. So this has been working its way down the capital channel for a while.
Okay.
And it makes
Yes.
sense to borrow for this one because it's got 20 years, so future ratepayers will help pay for it because they'll
Great.
be getting the benefit of it.
Excellent. Other clarifying questions? Yes, Mr. Bradley?
Is there any thought about what the impact would be if this was put off for a year? Like, why now, or even for that matter, 6 months until the next town meeting? So why now, why between the main annual town meetings?
We're certainly, and I can't give you an ENR number on how fast costs are escalating, but anytime we wait in this environment, it's going to cost us. We rolled the design, in other words, could it wait till spring? Probably. We are ready to go out. The first of the year is a good time to go out. I will back up a little bit on this thing and say that where Article 30, there's a very long lead time in getting these things going. So the increase for the Banyan Cumberland stations, it's actually a good time for it, because if we get that contract is sitting there, we can award, if we get the money the Monday after, or Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever we get the money on town meeting, if we get it, we can award that contract, and then they can go to work. And there's a very long lead time on jobs like that. While the submittal process comes in, pumps, all this equipment, all these things, that can happen over the winter, and then that job can be ready to go. I'm very enthusiastic about that schedule. We really need to do that one. But we're ready to go now. The timing is right. I'm not sure. The more question would be, why would we wait?
Yeah. All right, and Mr. Driscoll.
Is there a contingency built into this $6.8 million?
Yes.
How much is it?
The actual construction estimate's about $5 million, so we're up over it by that amount. But the construction effort in terms of the engineering is very substantial for a plant. Everything in here is equipment. It all needs to be reviewed. There's a lot of supervision that goes on. There's going to be a lot of coordination. That plant's going to have to go down for a while while it's under construction. So there's going to be consultant effort. There's a substantial effort out of even our own operations group and Veolia. But yes, there's a very wide number between there. I shouldn't say it's very wide, but in light of what happened with Article 30, we're probably a little bit wider than we would have been, because there are market forces out there. There's various things. I'm sure everybody reads the paper or whatever online, and tariff situations. Suppliers are reluctant to commit to holding prices.
Yeah.
Just looking for the number.
Also, there's no variables here as with the Cumberland Farm and Banyan Station. We're not excavating, we're not removing structures that are 20 feet under the ground. We're basically removing equipment out of the building and bolting new equipment back in.
Just to follow up for a minute, and I don't mean to take a lot of time. If we have to take it offline, as we're doing this, what are we going to do?
We will supply water from other sources, and we can.
And we can.
Yes.
Okay. Was there another question? All right, thank you. There's one more article I have here that was the DPW HVAC improvements. I think it's become article number 41.
Yes, all right.
Okay.
The equipment over the summer, one of the HVAC units was acting up at the DPW. It wasn't cooling the building off, and we were having moisture problems within the building. And so the director of building and grounds came and checked it out and determined that the unit on the engineering end wasn't cooling the building at all. So he called up his vendor that does the work for him, and they looked at the units, and they basically said these things are at the end of their life expectancy. They're 12 years old, and it was going to cost $7,000 to repair one unit. And based on the fact that at the end of their life expectancy, it seemed to be kind of wise maybe to replace them. The actual replacement value would be $26,000 and some change, and another $9,000 would be for a building management system that he has in all his facilities. He can monitor the heat. It notifies him if the heat goes out. It's just an insurance policy.
Okay. Other questions? Any questions on this article? Yes, Mr. Driscoll.
Is there an efficiency payback with the new system?
The new system will be more efficient, I know that. We haven't got the numbers on that, but it will be.
With the building management system, is there a subscription, or is this one time you put the equipment in and then an employee of the town is managing, as opposed to paying someone to manage it?
It would be one time purchase the equipment and the employee would manage it.
Okay, thank you.
Ultimately, we feel that the Director of Building and Grounds will oversee all of the heating systems. That way right now we have a different vendor maintaining our system, that they, so, you know, it'll be cost effective.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, thank you. That's
All right,
been
thank you.
very helpful. Thank you both for coming in
Thank you.
tonight. That's really helpful. All right, very good. Next item on our agenda is the Country Club Operating Committee. We have Katie Walsh here tonight, and, or whoever needs to speak, please
Okay.
introduce yourself to the community, and we want to hear from
I
you.
just wanted to just briefly
Okay.
update you. I think this summer, we were here as part of the Country Club Study Committee, and just to give you, and at that time, we were alerting you all to our declining enterprise fund and what had been happening. The study committee did go before the selectmen in September, and it was determined at, our recommendation from the study committee was to go for a director of golf as a town employee system. At the meeting before the selectmen, it was determined that we should stay with the current process, which is putting out a contract to have a manager of the, of the golf club through an RFP, which we have put together and we have put out. So some of these articles that are before you, one is just a basic housekeeping issue, and the other two look to address some of the issues to help our revenue source for the operation of the country club. And I'll let Dexter and Don take
Great.
over.
All right, so Country Club Operating Committee warrant articles are number 20, number 21, and number 22. So the first one is Article 20, Prior Year Bill Country Club Operating Committee.
Yes, good evening. Dexter Boyce, 2 Old Nurse Street, member of the Country Club Operating Committee. This is a, I'll say, routine article. It's 2 invoices or several invoices from 2 vendors that did not get submitted in time to be paid by the June 30 deadline or the July 10th deadline. One vendor is $947.24. And the other vendor is $127.48. I've got some detail here that
Okay.
probably will be helpful for you.
Thank you, sir.
This is on all the articles.
Thank you. Molly, did you get a call?
Thank you.
Dexter, you can have it. Yeah, this too, that's great.
No, just an extra seat.
Thank you, sir.
So the paragraph, the first paragraph is the articles that sits in the town meeting warrant. The second paragraph is the town manager's statement, which is in the warrant. And the third paragraph is my addition as an explanation for you folks as to what it entails. So that is Article 20.
Okay, any other questions about Article 20? So this is a transfer to pay a bill that,
Yes, this is a transfer, a request to transfer funds from the Country Club Country Club Enterprise Fund reserve account.
okay, it looks pretty straightforward. Does anybody have any clarifying questions? Looks very non-controversial and clear, thank you.
Hopefully it is, yes.
All right, no other questions here. Good, and number 21, Article 21.
Okay, number 21 is a request to transfer funds for the several items that I've listed below. I will note that I've highlighted in yellow. I did a mathematical error when I added the numbers together. So the warrant states that the increase in the expense budget would be to $466,000. That's incorrect.
Okay.
It's a Scrivener's error, so it doesn't affect the impact of the article itself, because the article is asking for a transfer of $64,300, and if you add that to the current budget, the total is $465,000. But again, that's we call it a Scrivener's error. It's not an impact on the appropriation or the transfer, because that's goes at the $64,300 as a request to transfer from. There's a second, after the yellow highlight, is to transfer an additional sum of, no, excuse me, where is it?
64,000.
It's 64,000.
300.
Yeah. I see.
44,300 for expenses and 20,000 for what I'll call is the Department of Revenue Adjustment.
Okay.
And I'll explain that if you like.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
so that's where the finance director, when she does the recap sheet to set the tax rate, the revenues from the previous fiscal year have to equal or exceed the expenditures for the current fiscal year. It's backwards as far as I'm concerned, that you're looking at last year's revenues to offset or to project this year's expenses. They're not looking at this year's revenues. They don't have them. We don't have the revenues until well into the third quarter of the fiscal year, actually. But if those numbers, if the revenue, last year's revenue is not equal to or exceeding this year's expenditures, then the difference comes from the general fund or the tax rate.
Okay.
And we haven't got there yet. That there's enough revenue, and we've appropriated in the annual operating budget at the March town meeting, we have appropriated in the past $40,000, this year $50,000, and that's to boost up the revenue or reduce the expenses to make this number balance for the recap sheet.
All right. Yes, Mr. West.
Lester, just a note here. I'm looking at the motion for Article 21.
Yep.
And it says, the value in the motion says $44,000.
Yeah.
I think that's incorrect. I think it needs to, I think the motion actually needs to be 64,300
Yep.
to be correct. So you should probably check with Christie.
That's in the second part of
In
the,
the second half of
the tail end of the sentence?
No, in the motion that's gonna be presented on town floor,
Yes.
okay?
It has the
The
40,000.
motion says 44,000.
I haven't seen those yet.
Well, okay, well, I'm just,
You have them.
I'm looking at the most recent copy of motions that we
Okay.
have.
That came.
And so I'm just saying that the motion, the last motion that we have says 44,000. I think that's incorrect. I think it should probably be 64,300.
Yes.
So you need to
Okay,
check with, you
will
need
do.
to get with Christie.
Got it.
So
I
that we have the
understand.
correct motion on town meeting
Thank you.
floor.
Yes, I understand. I haven't seen the motion, so I would have picked that up when we got to the motions.
Right.
Yeah.
But she hasn't got them out to the
To everyone else
committees
here.
yet, so.
Yep, we just
You're-
got the
you're
final
privileged
warrant
on
out
it.
today.
Can we quickly go to 22 and then come back to questions on 21 that Don Bafard will answer?
Sure, I don't see why not, so let's look at 22.
Okay, 22 is to transfer $6,400 from the retained earnings for security system and point-of-sale transaction equipment. And that, again, is to, we're making the motion or making the step for more accountability at the golf course. Those equipments, and again, Don will address those, will help us do so. Right now, we're using paper and pencil and an occasional cash register that's an old-fashioned,
Yep.
it's electric, it's not the crank type,
That's good.
so it's some progress, but it's not the way we want to go in the future.
Okay,
So,
all right.
I'll let Don answer questions. I've got some information that you might be interested in regarding the reserve fund.
Okay,
I see Hank smiling there. I put together a summary of what these articles will do based on the fact that the reserve funds have been certified. Free cash has been certified
okay,
as of within the last day or three, I guess.
okay.
But this number is,
Thanks.
the number at the top is, it says the starting balance is the certified free cash as of June 30, 2018.
Okay. Okay,
Donald Bouffard, 19 K Street, member of the Country Club Operating Committee. As you might remember, the last time we got together to talk about the Country Club finances, we had quite an extensive discussion. We had a grand plan for how we were going to turn this thing around. and we got into some detailed discussions about rewiring the cart barn for electric carts and really making a massive effort to get this thing headed in the right direction. When the selectmen decided that, in no uncertain terms, they let us know that they wanted us to keep the current operating structure in place. That is going to have some financial implications, which we will discuss with you in the 2020 budget. We've also recently dealt with an increase in the superintendent's contract of $20,000, $10,000 of which is reflected in the budget from January 1st to June 30, 2019, which is reflected in the numbers that we have here. So after having a committee meeting and talking about where do we go from here, Dexter and I sat down and we went through line by line, and we came up with a list of what do we absolutely positively have to do, and how can we do that without spending $1 more than we need to spend. So we came up with this list that we're talking with you about tonight. He mentioned Article 22. Those are some of the specific things. In Article 21, we've got a $20,000 budget for marketing. Now, we have never had to market the golf course before. Since 1974, I don't know that we have ever put $1 out of golf course revenues into marketing. So we've had some preliminary discussions with marketing experts, and I think a full marketing review is going to cost somewhere between $7,500 and $10,000. And we're going to try to get that done as cost effectively as we can. There'll be an ongoing marketing budget from January 1st, well actually from October 1st to next June. That'll probably be about $600 to $700 a month. And we'll also have some print, advertising, and media costs of another $600 to $700 a month. So I'm estimating that the $20,000 will get us through from October 1st to June 30. And obviously we'll come to you during the regular budget cycle to talk about where do we go from here. A couple of the specific things we're going to do is we're really going to make an effort to increase our vending by doing a beverage cart, where thanks to some changes in state laws, we're finally able to have adult beverages on municipal golf courses. So since beer and golf were invented 24 hours apart some 300 years ago, we're going to take advantage of that. I have product costs of $15,000 in Article 21. That will generate $30,000 of revenue. So it's about 50 cents on the dollar for beverages and snacks. So that will help our finances dramatically. In the RFP that's out for bid, we have a goal of 10% increase in membership and 10% increase in greens fees over the next 2 years. This is the first time that we are putting specific numbers on the plate for the manager to achieve. Obviously, we're going to help him with, or her, or whoever it happens to be, with updating our point-of-sale system, our management information system. The Recreation Department is also stepping up, and they have agreed to provide some time and facilities, their website. They indicated they do have the capability of taking on some additional marketing tasks. So we think that that 10% increase will generate another $40,000. And if we're fortunate enough with the beverage cart, we'll be doing another $15,000. So we are really hopeful that if we take these steps now, before things get any worse, that the financial picture when we come to see you, probably not in the 2020 budget cycle, but certainly we would be happy to come back at mid-year, maybe this time next year to tell you how we're doing. So those are some of the specifics that are in in Article 21.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yes.
Mr. Driscoll.
Driscoll.
Marketing expenses specifically for the golf course, nothing to do with the restaurant.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. And Mr. Bradley?
The restaurant is an interesting situation, and we've had many discussions about that. The restaurant lease is up in 2021, and I think we may have to tough it out between now and then. But there's certainly, we're going to be here a lot longer than 2021, and I think that problem can be fixed.
Okay, Mr. Bradley?
Yes, sir.
In a previous visit, I asked a question about the capacity for the golf course and how many, how much availability there was for
Rounds,
usage.
yes.
Well, rounds was
Yeah.
the metric, but
Yeah.
how many were used, and I think that at the time the discussion was that the capacity was fairly high.
It's around 30,000.
So
We've had as high as 31,000 nine-hole rounds played in a year there.
So, and I think the conversation though was how much could you grow that, and 30,000 was just about at capacity for what you would be able to offer. So, what would a marketing budget do? And maybe we need to reframe how much more business we could drive in. But if we're near the top of capacity, what's the additional marketing budget aiming to get?
What's happening is that the membership is going down. So their rounds are going down, and we've had some price increases. What's been encouraging this year is we're having our best year ever for what we call greens fees play. So we're going to generate, hoping we're going to come in at $190,000 this year, which is $20,000 more than we've ever been. So what we're doing is we're adjusting the mix of business, and the people who walk in and pay greens fees are essentially paying double what our members are paying per round. So I think that problem is solving itself.
I guess the follow-up then, the result would be then that the members are going to have fewer rounds available to them. If the capacity doesn't change, it's just a question of mix.
Right.
But it seems that the members' rounds are decreasing while what we were calling the external
Right.
rounds are going to be increasing. And that's what the marketing is intended to do, is to drive that
The greens fee play, yes. We're in a very interesting situation. We have to satisfy the members, and they want unrestricted access. They want their 20 tournaments a year. It's a very delicate balance between satisfying the members and also bringing in people that are paying a higher price. Okay. And we're trying to thread that needle, and it's been difficult. People are not happy with the fact that we're spending more time and money bringing in greens fee play.
Like in-state students and out-of-state students, I know it. Miss Bloomberg, yep.
Yeah, hi, sorry, not a golfer, but I was hearing friends talk about the fact that this has been a particularly soggy wet season and that a lot of golf courses are unavailable to carts, not necessarily closed. How's that impacting you this year?
We are very fortunate. We have a very good superintendent. We also have a golf course that's on the side of a hill. So with all of the money that has been spent over the years with drainage, the course can handle much wet weather than other courses. I guess Indian Meadows today was closed, and that's lowlands. That gets flooded pretty easily, and Juniper, Riverside gets flooded very easily as well.
So could your high year be because this is such a soggy year? I mean, like, could you be getting golfers who can't go to Indian Meadows and are going to go back to Indian Meadows when it opens again, just for example?
One of the reasons why our greens fee play is up is we entered into an arrangement with Golf Now, the popular website that golfers who like to go to different courses go on Golf Now to see where can I find a good deal, or is there a place that I haven't tried that I would like to try? And we'll be meeting with them sometime in the next several weeks to get an update on exactly what's driving that traffic. But I think that has been partially responsible for the increase in the greens fee play.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Mr. Hughes.
If I understand all this right, the rejection of the committee's suggestion, or whatever the group was, suggestions by, did that also include the partnership with the recreation department? You did mention about marketing, but I saw in the adult education that they're going to Northborough. I thought that they were going to get in partnership.
We will be working with them on that. We do send adults to Northborough because of the limitation we don't have a driving range, we don't have a place for lessons. This summer, our youth program was very successful, but we only used the course on Monday and Friday morning, and we used the athletic field at Gibbons on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So that was 3 weeks. We generated, the rec department generated 45 kids. So that was excellent. We're hoping to double that next year, and that is another revenue enhancer that we're hoping for.
So the relationship with the recreation department is pretty much what you recommended going forward?
Yes, yes. We've been working with them since the spring, and that would have happened in any event. It's just that the director of golf would have been part of the recreation department in the structure that we had recommended. But we're going to do our best to try to satisfy everyone.
Okay, any other questions to help you inform your vote on this? Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate that. Yep. Cool.
Talk about the electrical system number
I don't think so.
Do you have questions on the last article?
24.
Which was, yeah, the new security system, point of sale, transaction, equipment, and software. Any additional questions? I mean, it sounds like it's an update from your fairly basic rustic system.
We have to put a camera on the beer cooler and the cash register. We'll make money selling beer, but we have some security issues that we need to pay attention to.
Practical, yeah. All right, thank you.
Article 24 is also Country Club.
Oh, Article 24, I didn't have in my, okay.
It's
The Country Club, which is, there it is, electrical, buildings and grounds, $9,600. The other three, those first three transactions were departmental transfers. This one is a transfer from free cash.
the operating committee is really not responsible for this one, but it says
So-
Country Club.
This one is actually the building, the restaurant and the clubhouse building. And the Director of Buildings and Grounds wants to do an electrical analysis of the building. They're having problems with the electrical load at the restaurant.
Okay.
It will not affect the golf portion. We'll be bringing some coolers inside, but that's to deal with electrical issues at the restaurant portion of the building.
Right, the town manager spoke to us about this. There's electrical system upgrades that are needed there. Do people recall that? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your good work, and thanks for giving us background on these warrant articles. And you'll speak with whoever you need to about getting the number for the Article 21 corrected in the motions?
Yep.
Yep.
I have a question, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Has nothing to do with the country club.
Okay.
Do you folks accept, I'll say, counter discussion of articles?
Yeah, I think an open forum, Dexter, would be quite appropriate for any citizen to come and express opinions on articles that as a citizen they'd like us to be. We've had citizens come before who wanted to talk about an article or more than one article because they have concerns or issues and they wanted to make sure we were aware of data.
And you have open forum at
Open forum at the
7
beginning.
o'clock in the beginning of your
Yeah,
meeting?
beginning of every meeting we have open forum.
You know, you're here now, Dexter. I'm hearing that you would like to have a comment on another warrant article.
I'm happy to come back. I don't know what time it is,
What is
8:40?
It's up to you.
How long?
2 minutes.
Okay. Rather than have you come back, we'll take you. I
Thank
don't
you.
know that we're going to discuss it.
That's
I'm
okay.
willing to
I
hear what
just,
you have to
I
say.
just want to point out
Okay.
to you on the article that was presented by Selectman Hashi earlier tonight.
Mhm.
I don't know what the number is. If you look at the charter, about 2 paragraphs below where it states the Municipal Building Committee, the Board of Health, and the Board of Assessors are appointed by the town manager. They're ministerial committees, they're not policy-setting committees, as was pointed out. There's a paragraph there that says that the appointments shall take effect 15 days after the Board of Selectmen have been noticed, unless the Board of Selectmen rejects such appointments. So my contention is that it's already covered. And it's been there since 1974. I've been around since 1974 and involved with the town, that
Time is up.
Okay.
So you, I mean.
That was
what
your
you're
2 minutes.
What you're saying is we don't need to
That's my contention.
explicitly change it because that expectation, that requirement is already in there.
It is already there, and I ask you to look at the charter,
Okay.
and it's about 2 paragraphs below where it states those 3 committees are appointed by the manager.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks,
thank you,
Dexter.
thank you, yep. All right, we are at 8:40, oh, you have a question, Mr. Driscoll, yes?
No, Dexter, not you. But we have opened the door that during a meeting, somebody can come up and speak to us on an article or something like that that was prior to. It would have been a lot better to have Dexter come back.
Okay,
It's just a point. I mean, I didn't mind him being there, but I'm just saying that.
as a
that's-
practice?
As a practice.
Okay.
That's all.
As a practice?
No, you don't
Okay.
have to.
No, that's good, no, we're good.
We're good.
They're giving advice to the new chair, so its point is taken, yeah, thank you. All right, we are beyond when we were going to adjourn, so I'm going to ask folks if they want to take up the first 6 or 8 articles and take a vote on some of those that we may be ready to vote on. So I'm just taking some soundings in the committee. Do you want to stay and vote now, or do we want to queue up all the votes for another night?
Let us, I mean, one by one, you want an answer for that? Because I'm pro-vote.
You're pro-vote
Yeah.
tonight. Okay, let me just, show of hands.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you first how many want to take a few votes tonight. I'm going to posit maybe 6 or 8 votes tonight, but I'm not going to have us here past 9:15. And the second would be how many want to, okay, so how many want to do 6 or 8 of them tonight, but we'll be out of here at 9:15. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, 7.
It's a non-binding vote, but.
And do you need to go, Paul? Do you need to be out by 9?
And I might not the other day.
Okay. All righty. I don't want to leave us here too long. What I'm going to do is I am going to follow along on the very concise warrant article worksheet that Gary prepared, and I have extra paper copies of that if anybody needs one. Okay, there's one. Anybody else need that? And it's got a place for us to tally votes, and there are articles here that Gary suggests that we are ready to vote on. If someone wants more time, we don't have to vote on them tonight.
Can I just ask
Yes, Mr.
a
Driscoll.
quick question
Yep.
on Article 1? Beth, did you get the number of employees?
I never got that answered.
Okay. All right, let's take a look then at Article number 1. And Article number 1
Can
is...
we defer it
Pardon?
based on the question that Jim
Would you
just
like to
asked?
defer, or would you like to... Is
Well,
it
it
going
was
to...
Beth's question.
Yeah, I'd like to defer.
Okay, so we are going to defer, and you're checking on the number of positions that the non-union compensation study is going to impact.
Yeah,
So we're going to defer that, and Beth is going to get more information.
at least try.
All right. Then let's look at number 2, town manager recruitment. This is a Board of Selectmen article. It's $20,000 from free cash. Any further discussion on this? No further discussion?
I move that the Finance Committee
Oh, gotcha.
recommend to the voters that the town vote in favor of the article as published in the warrant.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Now, does anybody want to discuss it any further? Okay. All in favor of article number 2, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And are you abstain? So it's going to be an 8-0-1. So it ends up being a yes, 8-0-1. All right. Let's take a look at state hospital maintenance. This is article number 3. And this was in the amount of $10,000 from free cash to take care of state hospital maintenance that needs to be done between now and winter time, as far as I understand that. Do we have a motion?
I move that the Finance Committee recommend to the voters that the town vote in favor of the article as stated in the warrant. I think that's the right
All
words.
right. And do we have a second?
Second.
And is there any further discussion on the state hospital maintenance in the amount of $10,000?
Only an observation for this and a
Yep.
number of other votes that we have, because, and maybe it's just my inexperience here, but I've heard more this year about, and this is one of the articles, that, well, we think the amount will be this, but we've padded a little bit. And I think that as a point of direction, I don't know how to get this out to the folks who will be coming to us, that I would like that be made more upfront and clear. And when Mr. Driscoll actually asked the question pointedly, they were able, at least DPW was able to admit it, but I would like to recommend that the folks who come before us be able to articulate that more clearly going forward,
I understand.
just as a point of suggestion.
I get that. Any other comments on that point?
No, I agree, because I think there's a real tendency that once that's voted, it gets spent one way or the other. Maybe not on that thing, but on the if everybody feels like, hey, we already voted for that, let's throw it away.
I mean, yes, and another comment, yes?
I'm just thinking that the information is probably financially available, and that we should look into how the general ledger works to come up and maybe possibly format some expense reports that go against particular projects or accounts.
That suggestion, though, would be something that's already spent, so that would be how much was spent against it. But I'm saying at this point of recommendation, we've heard from several people, we think it's going to be this, but we're padding it. And I would like to, I don't know.
Well, it came up, I mean,
If there's a budgeted amount and there's an expense, there's a variance.
right.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
But I believe our town finance director or the accounting department would have that information.
That's what I'm
So, but it
She
did.
publishes that information periodically.
So that's available to us to ask her for. But it occurred to me too that we budget, and my question was, what happens if it's not spent? And it could be, they could either spend it out, or what's unspent goes into free cash. Now, so that practice, I mean, what we're asking is that what you come and ask for the town is closer to what you're actually going to be doing. The point is taken.
But I think there's also the piece of it that if they ask too closely, then they get in trouble because they have to come back again.
And then they come back and say, hey, we're under budget, and maybe they're not under
But
budget.
then we pay for special meetings in order to cover things, as opposed to
Okay,
just covering them.
so so we're having a general discussion. I'll take one more comment on this general principle because I think we understand it, but then we're going to come back to this specific article. Yes.
Such a thing as squirreling.
Pardon?
Squirreling.
Squirreling money, yeah.
Acorns.
Yeah, which helps us stay out of trouble in other ways. But I understand. We would like what we are voting on now to be as close to the work, as the actual work as possible now.
Okay, back to 3.
All right, given that, do we have a motion? Did we already have the motion?
Already
We
motion.
have a
We already
motion.
have a
Then we're
motion.
ready
We
for a
already have
vote.
motion in a second.
Okay, all those in favor of Article 3, State Hospital Maintenance, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, it's unanimous. This is a 9-0-0. Okay, then we move on to Article number 4, which is Highway Department overtime. And let's see, this is a DPW article for $30,000, free cash to budget. Do we have a motion?
I move that the finance committee recommend to the town, that the town so vote. Vote as written in the warrant.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. And any further discussion? Yes, Ms.
This
Bloomberg.
one makes me really uncomfortable that I understand that we have to pay this bill, but I really don't like a decision was made to spend more money without getting approval from somebody ahead of time.
Okay.
This is not really spending more money. The DPW paid this out of their overtime budget. But what will happen is they will come up short on their overtime budget at the end of the year.
So what they would have budgeted
So then they
for
would come back in July, and we would have to do an end-of-year transfer from
An
the
emergency.
AFC reserve fund to cover this $30,000.
Or some
Yeah.
amount.
Or some amount, depending on how the dollars and cents rolled out of the DPW budget. But they've already basically paid this from their budget, and they are, they're saying that, if our and the DPW is very good at budgeting. They are Maria Elena keeps it very close on a year-to-year basis. So if if they've added up to $30,000 for this specific purpose, you
That
know.
they didn't anticipate.
Right, they're basically saying that, you know, by the end of the year, we're gonna be short $30,000 on our overtime budget.
Okay, and Mr. Bradley, and then...
Yeah, and I think in second of that, my take was that this is money that they were gonna spend for the police details. So that expense ends up being 0, whereas this expense ended up being 30, and it's just the bucket it came from was my take.
Sort of, but
But that's my issue is that then they have the 30,000 that they said, well, we'll spend that on another project for chapter 90
No,
eligible.
because
You said that.
it has to do with, it goes back to the rules regarding chapter 90 money.
But a new project, he said that, a
Right.
chapter 90 eligible project.
Right.
At their choosing, it's like they took this money, we're giving it to them here, and then they're saving it, and then it's at their discretion how to spend it.
Okay. Did you have a comment, Hank? No? Any other comments that are going to inform this vote? Point taken on being... Yes, Beth?
I'm going to support it because I think we need to pay it, but I would like to put a comment afterwards explaining to the town that, you know, this is we hope, a one-time thing, because I'm very ambivalent about this. I don't know.
We can't make that commitment.
I'm
We
not
can't.
particularly,
No.
I mean...
We have no
it's-
control over whether it's a one-time thing or whether it happens
All
again
right, fine.
tomorrow.
And at some point, you know, at some point, you have to trust the professionals that are in place to be making good decisions, but with oversight. So I appreciate the commentary that what they ask for has to be much closer to what planned spending is going to be. All right, are we ready to vote? Article number 4, those in favor? Do we have another? No, we have an 8, and all those opposed? Okay, I get it. 8-1-0.
Just so it's not, you know,
Yep, I get it.
unanimous.
All right, number 5, Building Department budget. This is to transfer, let's see, $45,590. Let's see, this is to transfer from the Building Department expenses account to the Building Department salary and wage this sum of $45,590. This is to fund a part-time electrical inspector,
It's a
electrical expense, okay.
I
remember.
move that the Finance Committee recommend the town vote to transfer $45,590 from the Building Department expense account to the Building Department salary and wage account for the purposes indicated in the warrant article.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Do anybody want to discuss this one? Yes? Uh-huh.
The $45,000 for a part-time employee seems like a lot of money to me, and I would expect that this person, for the number of hours that he's going to be working, would also get benefits. Is that true?
Did we clarify that? Is this a
Yeah, we
benefited
did.
position?
I think we did go over that with Christie, and not eligible for benefits.
Not eligible for benefits, okay.
Yeah, these less than 20, benefits are 20 hours a week.
And this is
Right,
19.
20 hours a
And they're
week
gonna
or
hold
more.
them to under,
19
hold
hours.
them to under 20 hours a week.
It was previously contacted and paid through expenses, and now it's transferring over. Yep.
It's next year.
Right.
That's
You'll
this
get
year.
21
No,
hours.
that's not.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, other questions or comments? Are you ready to vote? Okay, those in favor of Article number 5? We're unanimous. That one is 900. Are we ready on Council on Aging budget? This is number 6. Article number 6, Council on Aging. This was in the amount of $33,206. This is a budget adjustment.
This is similar, isn't it?
Article number
Number 6.
6, yep. Do I have a motion?
You want to tell us what this motion ought to look like? This one confuses me.
Yeah, let's see.
So
No,
this
it's the
was,
same-
this is
actually, it's
very
the same.
similar.
It's the
This
same
is
thing as
one where
Article 5, that they're
contractors
moving,
being transferred to employees.
they're moving some,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so
But this one is interesting. There's a raise and appropriate of 5,200, and then there's a departmental transfer of 33,206. So is it going to be two motions?
no, it's one,
No,
it's
it's one
one, it's all
motion. But one
incorporated, all
motion,
incorporated
okay.
into one motion.
I move the Finance Department recommend the town vote to raise and appropriate $5,200 and transfer $33,206 from the Council on Aging expenses account to the Council on Aging salary wage account.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Take your pick. And discussion? Yes.
How many hours?
Less than 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, these are like the drivers on the bus.
It's,
I think
no.
there are some benefits here, and I think that's what the 5,200 is.
Yeah, I think this is to come in compliance with the fact these people are acting as employees and we're making them employees.
I think we made these changes at the spring meeting, and now we're funding them.
Well,
It's not what it says in the
we,
manager's statement. It says to cover salary,
yeah,
Yeah, because they used to be under expenses as contractors.
but not benefits.
yeah, my concern is that we're adding to the head count. And I don't understand, we didn't get a clear understanding of what the long-term implication is of adding head count to the payroll for the Council on Aging.
I would like to pass this one for now.
Would you like to pass over and get some more
So
information?
I'd rather, I'd kind of like them to tell us why are we doing this? Because the long-term implications are that these people need to work more than what you can get out of a contractor.
So am I hearing you'd like us to have Christie back to just get a little clearer on this
I
one
don't know if
before
it's
you vote?
Christie or, I don't know who the right person
Was
is.
town manager, so I guess we turned as the sponsor.
It's Christie.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Now we're discussing taking that motion back.
I think if I remember correctly, this goes a little bit to the issue of treating 1099 contractors as employees. That the town can actually get into trouble
If we don't.
when you 1099 contractors, the rules regarding 1099 contractors versus employees. So when you start directing 1099 employees like they are, you know, you can get into trouble with the various state agencies on taxation and everything like that. So I think it's because these employees, i.e. namely namely I believe it was probably the bus drivers, right, where we now, you know, run a fairly
Consistent?
system, buses around town and directing them like employees. You can't treat them like contractors.
So, I mean, I recall from experience when I was a state employee, and this was a long time ago, if you worked for the agency as a contractor, there was a 25% differential added to your salary, just acknowledging the fact that they weren't paying benefits. So I don't know if this is similar to that or not, but I need to ask. We've had one member ask us to defer this vote until we can clarify this. So it's a motion.
I just put the motion on the floor just to get things moving.
Yeah.
I mean, we can defeat the motion and say we want them to come back.
Jim, do you feel strongly? Because I can call Christie and ask her to come back and explain.
No, I can live with it. My basic overall concern here is the medical insurance that we are paying, the overall contract that we have. And it seems to me like the number of hours, and I heard somebody say 20, doesn't seem to me to sit very well with me. That that's not a lot of hours to get benefits. And that's where I'm coming from.
I would have to ask about that.
My understanding is beyond 20 hours, you get prorated benefits. You don't get 100% benefit, but it is beyond 19 hours, actually, because at 20 hours and above, I believe,
Yeah,
they
they're
get
they're
prorated benefits.
I'm sure that our assistant town manager and our acting town manager would be able to tell us what the state requirements are, what the city requirements are, and what are just policy here in town. Those are questions worth asking. Point taken. Anything more? Okay. All right, if we're ready to vote, all in favor of Article number 6, Council on Aging Budget. Yeah, it's all those in favor. It looks like we have 7 of 9, all opposed. Did you vote yes or no?
I'm just going to abstain.
Okay, and you're going to vote no, okay. You're going to abstain. So it's 802.
Wait, 7.
Or 7,
1-1.
no, we have 2
7-0.
abstains.
Or
2 abstentions.
7-0-2.
7-0,
Okay. okay.
2.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries.
My sense is we haven't heard from the police chief.
Yeah, we should wait on that one.
No, okay.
7, 8,
So
9,
it looks like down to 11.
11.
Yep, 11, Article number 11, Sandra Pond Dam Maintenance, that was Conservation and DPW. Derek Sari came in to talk to us earlier in the week. Article number 11. Upper and Lower Sandra Pond Dam Maintenance, and this is $27,394 from free cash. Do I have a motion? Yes, Terry.
I move that, we just say that we pass this and order it in the warrant.
As written in the warrant.
As written in the warrant, the
Sure.
$27,394.
Yep. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, second. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? This is a 900. All right, and then are we ready for the ADA self-evaluation? And that is Article number 12. This is $50,000 from free cash for an American Disabilities Association self-evaluation. We heard about this from our town manager and our assistant town manager. And yes, do we have a motion, or did you want to ask a question first, Jim?
Well, I'm just, and maybe it was already covered when the town manager was here, but aren't there any grants available for this stuff?
She's looking.
I've got some notes that she is looking for a grant. This is required. We're quite behind on getting this done. I think it's been required of us since the 1990s. So it is time to do it. I've got a note here that says if a grant comes in while she's seeking it, that this appropriation would then revert to free cash. But they're eager to get this work done this year. Yeah?
Right. What she said is she's got some applications out. If the grant comes in, then she'll basically ask to pass over the motion. And she has one grant for 10,000. It's just not enough.
Okay. All right, yes.
Just to follow up then, is really if she has $10,000, is the 68 or the 50 include, or is it higher, or should it be lower by $10,000?
I think she knew she had the $10,000 and came in with a
Okay.
$50,000 ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion on this one?
Which number is it?
It's numbered, or it's,
I move the Finance Committee recommend the town vote in favor of the motion, in favor of the article as written in the warrant.
Don't you have to put dollar amounts in on?
I think you only need the dollars if it's raise and appropriate.
Oh, okay.
this is 50, yeah, 50, okay.
Okay.
I don't know, I forgot to tell you the truth.
Okay. $50,000 from free cash if that's needed in there.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor? Looks like we have 900 on this one. Okay. And then we have ADA compliance in the recreation and conservation area. Mr. Sari came in and talked to us about
Let's
this.
pass on this one because we haven't gotten the numbers back.
Oh, this was, okay, just to update for those of you who weren't here, let me look at this. This is article number 13, correct? And they came in asking for $68,688 to put in 4 handicap parking spaces across 3 fields. A couple of members of the committee were concerned that if they're opening up the construction, and we would later need additional spaces, why don't they consider putting in an extra space at each site now? So Derek is getting whatever that incremental increase in this budget number would be if they were to decide in their department to double the amount of handicap parking spaces they'd be putting at these 4 fields. And yes, Andrew, you had a question?
That incremental amount was gonna be something that we would have to recommend on the floor, because this warrant is as written. So we can accept this motion, we can vote on this motion technically as is, because nothing would change. The question, the additional information would just be something that we would,
It's a bad plan.
why?
Because we should, once we put what our recommendation in the warrant, like, we can write in the warrant, once we know what the cost is, whether we're gonna recommend it. So let's say the cost is something we think we're gonna recommend. We can write something in our report and recommendation saying why we voted as such.
You know, this one really confuses me because the role of the Advisory Finance Committee here, and I'm kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. We had a department come with a warrant article, and we need to review the warrant article and make recommendations about whether to approve or not approve that warrant article. Now we're getting into crossing some kind of a functional boundary into recommending to them how they bring the warrant article and actually expanding their scope of work. And I understand we don't want them being penny wise and pound foolish and asking for less work now that might cost us more work later. But I don't know, I'm a little uncomfortable sending a department back asking them to increase the ask, because the Advisory Finance Committee recommends that they increase the ask. So, yes.
I don't know that we'd be technically recommending they increase the ask, although I hear that we could add a note. I think it'd be within our scope to add within our notes, which we could still take, that says we've heard that this would cost an incremental this amount, because that's part of what we do as a finance committee, to gather information and to ask questions that the commoner couldn't. But I still think we can vote as is and stipulate that we would still like the information, perhaps to reflect that as sort of information to the voters.
Okay, and do we have any other comments here, clarifying comments?
With the combination of what you both just said, I want to vote on this one, and especially where he did get back to us the next day to say he was going to pursue it, but didn't get back to us the next day after that with the numbers. They're not asking for, and I know maybe they're being penny foolish with. But I don't know why we're asking people to increase what they're asking
Right.
for.
I mean, and if I begin to think of the challenges they have in those parking lots, he did mention that they have unpaved parking lots that are unlined, so they can't even get a proper car count in order to do a ratio to calculate. So maybe what they'd be doing next time is coming back and asking to pave the entire parking lot. But how are we to know that? That's not really our purview. Hank, did you have?
Yeah, I mean, it is our purview to be sure that they've done appropriate due diligence.
Okay.
In terms of either, in terms of the needs of the town, or in terms of legal requirements imposed on us by the state or by the federal government.
But you did ask the question if their plan brought us into compliance.
Yeah, the answer was that because it's unmarked, there's no minimum number or something.
There's no minimum guideline. And that, that's part of the, to some degree, we got the cart before the horse, because what we really should have been doing is the evaluation.
Right.
Right, I mean,
But we did also ask if this exposes us to risk prior to that, and the answer is we could be sued just because there is no parking there at all, or no accessibility.
we can't be sued for damages. We could be sued to cause us to put in to make available handicap accessible parking.
I completely appreciate that, but there's still the time and the cost and the expense and the effort for
But
litigation,
again,
so.
I have not seen any information that says we've done a needs assessment, right? Needs assessment. What are the needs of the community? How many handicap parking spaces do we need at our recreation facilities? How many do we need at other places? I haven't seen that needs assessment, so I'm going off and I'm spending money to solve a problem that I don't know how big the problem is. And I don't know when I'm done with it, or I'll solve the problem. This particular one, you know, we gotta go do something, but we really need to be careful. We need to force these folks to do the needs assessment and come in here and tell us how many spaces we need. I mean, how many cars are there in the town of Westborough that have handicap plates on them? 1, 10, a million? I don't know. But folks ought to be coming in with some basic data that says, you know, there's 1,000 handicap plates, and we expect 10% of them to show up at a ball game, so we need 10 spaces, right? They haven't done due diligence.
I think this demonstrates our intention to do the right thing, and to me heads off any legal action. If there was legal action, it would be that we need to add more spaces. There's no damages other than that. So we're doing something to do the right thing, but we don't need to go overboard.
Okay, good. And Mr. Driscoll, did you have a comment? No. Okay. All right, so I'm back into a confusing process area. Are we going to vote on this warrant article as is?
We have to.
Okay.
We can't change the article.
Because the warrant is closed.
The warrant is closed.
So Beth, I think you're going to floor strategy.
We can't change the article.
Yep.
The only thing that is open is that we could make a recommendation on town meeting floor to increase if we felt the need was there.
So I would like a motion on that, because I want to hear from the committee, how many of the committee feel like we need to recommend that they do more?
We haven't got the figure back.
We don't have the data yet.
Yeah,
So we can approve or disapprove the warrant article as it stands right now. When we get additional information back, we can have a rediscussion on the point of, is only having one handicap space
Per,
Sufficient.
or two, per field is what it ends up being.
You know, is one appropriate, or if you're gonna go through the activity of building one, make two, right? And if that's only gonna cost another $5,000, then, you know, then we could have the discussion that says, well, if we do an adjustment to the article, the $75,000 or something along that nature, they would have the extra money so that at each one of these fields, there would be at least 2 spaces
So,
as a minimum.
which gets us right back to what Hank was pointing out, that we have an ADA self-evaluation coming up, but there has
Correct.
been no evaluation done for the recreational field, so we don't even know what the right amount is.
Wasn't it mentioned that these wouldn't be included in that?
No, they will be.
It will
That
be.
was part of it.
It will be.
I think you said something different.
Yeah, but the
No,
people who
everything-
just said the ADA compliant said they are gonna look at the fields also, because that is part of being part of the town and being part of the
So
overview.
we've heard that in 2 different ways, but yeah. All right.
So we have
So
to,
what-
so we
so
have to
gives-
vote on the article as it stands.
Right, but I'd
We
like
could-
to vote on.
We can wait till either Thursday, or
We
we can
can't-
wait till
well,
next week.
I would make the argument that we can't wait. I would make the argument that our schedule is getting to the
Right,
point
so we have to vote,
where
but.
we're gonna be into crunch time.
All right.
You know, so we need to clear some of these out.
I
So
would
think
like
we
to
need
vote- I
I think
would-
we need to vote on these
Okay.
things tonight,
I
and
would-
start clearing these
I
out.
would like to vote on the article as written, but I would also like a vote from the committee on whether we need to push this agency to get the incremental, to do more analysis to get the incremental, whether we as a committee need to be recommending to the agency that they, or the department that they increase the scope of this. I don't know if I mean, I know, I've got 2 folks who think that we need to do that. I don't know if the rest of the committee
As a
think we
matter
need to do
As a
that.
matter of policy for ourselves, and to maintain our credibility as a committee, if folks come here and agree to give us more data, we should hold them accountable to give us the more data.
Okay,
Otherwise, we'll lose credibility and accountability as a committee.
okay. So in any case, we can vote
But
on that.
we need more data in order to decide on
No,
this.
I didn't
No,
say we need more
can still
data to make
vote,
a
but
decision.
I get what I'm hearing.
We ought to hold people accountable if they make a commitment
Right.
to come back
But
and
it's
meet
for
the
something
commitment,
that
right?
they didn't propose.
Right.
We
They
can
don't
circle
want
back
it.
with Derek. So we can vote on tonight's article, and I'm happy to circle back with Derek to see if he got those additional numbers. Then we have I don't know how we handle increasing the amount on
Well, we can
the
take care of
floor.
that.
But we'll have to take care of that in future discussion.
Deal with that.
So we're creating a little bit more work on the side for ourselves, and we'll follow up with Derek Sari about that incremental increase for doubling the number of handicap spots.
Yeah, I'll follow up with them because it's my liaison.
Great, thank you, thanks for doing that. All right, did we have a motion to vote on this yet?
I don't think so.
Do we
I'll
have?
make one.
Okay,
As, we recommend to the town that they vote as the article reads.
right, and this is 68,688 in free cash, so. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. How many in favor of this article as written? And this is, we've got 8, and how many opposed? And how many, are you opposed? Okay, I understand. So we've got 8-1-0. This was tricky. And we've got a commitment to ask Derek Sari for more data on the incremental increase to double the number of spaces. All right. Transportation Fund, are we ready for that one? That is.
As a point of procedure, you did
DPW.
say you were going to try and wrap up at 9:15.
At 9:15?
But that, I'm okay to do a couple more, but I just
Okay.
want to point out that you had a
I
call.
think that point. If we go into the next ones, we're getting into one of the DPW ones for tonight. Let's do one more, if I may. This is Article number 16.
What happened to 14?
Oh, I don't have it as ready to go. Charter review.
That's fine. No, that's right, let's keep going.
Okay. Article 14 is the Charter Committee. Yeah, that's right, this is non-controversial. We haven't discussed it.
It's okay, we haven't discussed it, that's fine, let's keep going.
Okay, then let's do number, this is the last one for tonight, number 16, Transportation Fund. Thank you.
Which one's the transportation?
Appropriation of Transportation Infrastructure Fund. This is the one we heard about tonight, $5,277.40. This is the one that the Lyft and Uber tax came back to the town and they
The
need.
manhole covers.
Money
And we're
from
gonna
Lyft to lift the town.
Yes,
manhole.
it's state money that's come to us that needs town meeting approval that's being appropriated for the manhole project. And the town just needs to be approve and accept this cash, this state funding. Do we have a motion?
Sure. I make the motion that that we recommend that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $77.40, or other such amount as town meeting may approve, for the purpose of raising the manhole covers on West Main Street.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And any discussion? All in favor? This one is unanimous, 900. Okay,
Motion to.
that's how voting is going to go.
Oh, wait, we're not motion
And
to
we
adjourn.
have future draft agendas. Marwa, can you just update us on who's coming on Monday? I did just get a new one this afternoon for Monday.
Yep, school committee, is coming on Monday. We have the police department, Chief Lori and, a representative, Dawn Byrne.
Yeah.
From BPAC.
Right, and just so the committee knows, I went to this reception this afternoon, met up with Don Byrne. He's actually in Southborough tonight, presenting to their bicycle and pedestrian committee. And that committee's meeting next Monday night while we're here, and he's agreed to come up for 10 minutes from that meeting and maybe bring some more of the committee. And let him know we really need some background on the mission and vision of the program, what you're doing, and where you're going with it. So they'll be here. You're welcome. Nice to see him. So they will be added to Monday night's meeting, and we'll try and move it along, and we're going to try and take votes after we hear from the presenters then, too. Any other liaison?
Just, Beth, you had raised a question about records that are in Spar House.
Yes.
I talked to Christie, and Christie said that, they'll move, they understand the records are there. When the RFP hits the street, they'll move the records to an appropriate storage location.
Okay.
Take them out back
I
and
think
burn
we
them.
also had the question of whether they were included in the scan.
Well, that's a separate
Have-
question. I gotta, I haven't
Have they
got,
been scanned?
I gotta go after Fred to get that answer.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to adjourn? Yeah, oh, do you have another comment? Yep, okay.
What's the process to move the ones that we had tonight, DPW basically, into the ready to vote?
Ready to vote, we just add yeses here.
Just add yes.
So,
That's gonna happen.
yeah, and if somebody can, yes.
We've heard all that, you know, once
Yeah, no, that's okay.
once we've had the
Presentation?
presentation, it's basically,
Right,
you know, unless somebody has requested, you know, a specific request has come up for, you know,
For follow-up.
Yep.
for follow-up, then if nobody's requested any additional follow-up, and we've had the presentation, you know, like that, it should be ready for a
it
vote.
should be ready for a vote. So DPW slides over into the yes column, Country Club Operating Committee slides over, and Selectman Hashmis does. Okay. Now, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Meeting adjourned? We'll see you.